Podcasts and TV are just a few ways people can get their news these days, and in this increasingly divisive political climate, you often hear the term fake news being used. A long-standing Gallup poll that surveys Americans' confidence in U.S. institutions found that out of 15 groups, trust in television news ranks second to last, just above Congress. Newspapers were only 2 places ahead. That leads to our next discussion about how journalists should respond and adapt to heightened skepticism. For more, we turn to Dylan Smith, editor and publisher of the Tucson Sentinel, and Susan Swanberg, a former attorney and assistant professor at the University of Arizona School of Journalism. Susan, I want to start with you. The industry's changing. How should journalists adapt? I mean, you are a professor, so you probably have these conversations regularly with your students.
That's true, and it can be very difficult to adapt. And when you have students who are excited about the profession, you don't want to dampen that enthusiasm. On the other hand, you want them to have a realistic view of what they're going to be facing. So I always discuss ethics and that it's better to be accurate and quick. You need to balance that so you don't make mistakes. I also try to make my classroom a place where they can own up to mistakes so that they learn that it's better to go talk to someone and explain, ooh, I think I made a mistake, and then fix it if it's fixable.
Dylan, you can keep the foundations of journalism in place, but nonetheless, the media are scrutinized.
Yeah, I think there are some time-honored principles of journalism that we are always going to keep in mind. You have them right there in front of you. The Society of Professional Journalists Code of Ethics that all of us, most of us, keep very much in the forefront of our minds. And so many changes going on outside of that, you know, in technology and the business itself. But trying to maintain that, to remember what our job is, to seek the truth and tell people about it, needs to still be the most important thing.
Trust and respect are things that we need to maintain, but is the public, though many of us are shooting for that every instance of our work, but does the public view that the same?
I think it's a little touchy right now, but I think one way we can deal with that is to emphasize the fact that we have a job to do, we have a role to play in a democracy, and also to be role models for transparency. There are a lot of issues related to transparency involving records and hearings, and right now the Mueller case or Mueller file and the report is a controversy. But we need to be transparent. We need to teach our students that transparency is very important. It's one of the most important things, as is independence. We need to be careful with our social media presence, make sure that we don't appear to have biases, and I think that can go a long way to maybe reinstill some confidence in journalism. But it's going to take a long time. A lot of damage has been done, and I don't think we can reverse it overnight. What would you say?
I think there is a lot of confusion in the minds of readers, viewers, that just the general public about the difference between journalism overall and reporting. Journalism legitimately includes commentary. Hopefully it's founded commentary that puts things into context and analyzes things and doesn't try to just back up a set of alternative facts that support some point of view that aren't really facts at all. And we see, you know, way too much of that and way too much just, you know, hot air being spewed on cable news. And a lot of people in the public think of that as what journalism is. You know, journalism is digging into things, finding out the things that politicians and bureaucrats and corporations and activist groups don't really want you to know, and letting people know about them and explaining them. That, you know, I think reporting is what we need to try and get across, is what people actually need. They need good, solid information.
Susan, you mentioned a lot of damage has already been done. Who's done the damage?
I think it's culture-wide. I think there's been so much mistrust. I think in government there are so many controversies where the media, journalism, journalists, reporters are trying to report accurately, try to uncover those truths, but there's so much pushback. There's so much of a desire to hide things, and there's loss of understanding of the role of journalism that Dylan was just speaking about. So that's where I think a lot of the damage has been done. And Dylan is right that they don't understand that there is a place for opinion, evidence-based opinion, which is what I teach my students. If you do write opinion pieces, they have to be evidence-based. So I think it's culture-wide where the damage is coming from, and there is some crosstalk back and forth that aggravates it at times.
You've both mentioned social media, and oftentimes you will see a journalist retweet something from someone or opine on something that maybe can color their reputation. Are the viewers, the readers, subscribers sitting back and forming an opinion about that person's bias?
Maybe a little bit, and I don't think it's a necessity for reporters to pretend that they have no opinions about things. You know, what Jay Rosen at NYU calls the view from nowhere, balancing on a knife's edge of not favoring any side, doesn't serve the truth. It's our job to dig into things and point out what's true and what is false, and sometimes even what is a lie. That sort of independence from the process, not trying to favor one side or another, but just favoring the truth, is something that I think journalists need to have opinions about.
What is your message to the viewers, the readers who are sitting at home and watching this and thinking, can I trust that person? What do I need to know about that person? I mean, this is a thankless job. Many journalists, we do not make a lot of money. But you're highlighted and people put a spotlight on you because they think that they know you and your type of work. So what's the message to those folks?
Turn off cable TV news, quite simply. There's still some good reporters who work for the networks, but so much of that is just people babbling hot air and repeating the talking points that they were faxed that morning. Some of those people still get faxes, I think. That's how they get their stuff. And it's just really a performative exercise that does not inform anybody. Go find people who are dedicated to actually bringing you the truth rather than delivering the political message of the day.
Susan?
Well, one thing that I would suggest people do is get their information from more than one source. Look at different perspectives. Get your information from a broad variety of places, and then you're more likely to get something that's balanced. And Dylan is very right, though, that balance in journalism, for example, as I tell my students, you're not going to give a lot of attention to someone who believes the earth is flat when you're writing a story about the earth. So sometimes balance does not help you reach the truth. You need to be balanced if there are evidence-based opinions on both or many sides, but you also have to be careful not to overemphasize something that is not factual.
And don't be afraid to step outside of your comfort zone if what you're hearing and reading is not what you want to hear and see.
That's true, and bells should go off if you're a careful reader. If there's something that maybe doesn't have a basis in reality.